Hey, and welcome to a new episode of Worlds Collide, the podcast where I talk to people who moved abroad. I am your host, Viktoria, and I just want to say hi to everyone and welcome to everyone who is a new listener. So apologize for my rough voice this week. Of course, it's cold season, so I caught a cold. I lost my voice completely over the weekend, but now it's kind of back. So I can do this little quick intro. This week's episode is another new one. We haven't had a guest yet who moved there. So my guest is Michael, and he moved to Romania. And we will talk about that. And just to give you a rough idea where it is on the map, because I guess, like most people know, it's in Eastern Europe, of course. But so it's like 2 countries further east of Italy. And it's already touching the Black Sea. So you kind of have a rough idea where it is on the map. But he will talk more about what brought him there and how life is in Romania. All right. Here it is. Here's the whole conversation. Here's Michael. All right. My guest today is Michael. Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for being here. So where are you right now?
I am in Romania, just outside of Bucharest.
Okay, and why? What brought you to Romania? Why?
We ended up in Romania. My wife is a teacher and had been applying to international teaching jobs and was offered a job at a school. Here, and that's how we ended up specifically in Romania. But we had been looking for a couple years for my wife to find an international teaching job and travel the world, and just so happened that Romania is our first stop.
Oh, okay. So is that the first time that you were abroad?
No, I grew up abroad. I left the U.S. when I was 6, due to my dad's job. And from the ages of 6 till I finished high school, I lived in Morocco, Switzerland, and Poland.
Oh, okay. So for you, it was like more or less like a no-brainer. Hey, if you're down to move abroad, let's do it.
Yeah, I loved growing up like that, and I wanted to give my kids that if possible.
And so how long have you been now in Romania? I mean, is it Bucharest? It's probably a small town.
Yeah, it's technically not Bucharest. We're in a town called Corbanca, which is, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes from the edge of Bucharest. And with traffic, it takes 2 hours to get to downtown Bucharest.
Okay, so you're in Romania, suburbia.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so how long have you been there?
So we've only been here for about 4 or 5 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're still relatively new. It's a little bit like home for me. I consider home, although it's probably not that accurate since I left 20 years ago, but Poland is where I graduated high school. So that's always kind of been my home. And so it's Eastern Europe. This is Eastern Europe. So there's a lot of similarities in that it's very comforting for me.
Okay. So Poland was then where you spent most time abroad?
Yes. I spent a total of probably almost 6 years in Poland. We lived there twice. We lived there for 2.5 years, then we left and came back for about 3.5 years. So.
Okay. Okay. How did you settle in where you are now?
Could you be a little bit more specific?
Oh yeah. So I mean, like, how did you find an apartment, for example?
Yes. So we had to have everything done before we even got here. Luckily, some of my wife's colleagues were very helpful. They went and looked at places for us. They recorded videos.
Okay.
And due to the language barrier, they even did some translation for us. And yeah, that's how we found this place. And they came and saw it for us and gave us their thoughts, and then they connected us with the landlord. And yeah, it was a little complicated, but it was actually pretty smooth in the end. So
so it was with the help of the colleagues from your wife.
Yes.
And they're all also international teachers?
Uh, some of them are,
Mm-hmm.
and then the owner of the school. It's a small school.
Mm-hmm.
They're Romanian. And they also have a couple Romanian teachers and a couple international teachers. So
And so how has it been so far?
it's been good. We only have one car, so and I work from home, so
Okay.
I don't I don't get out much is probably the best way to put it. We try to do as much as we can on the weekends, but that's also kind of who we are. I don't want to say we're shut-ins, but like on the weekends we like to go work out and then we like to rest.
Okay,
and
got it.
but we still, every day we're, at a grocery store or, still living life, in Romania. And it's for my wife and I, my wife also grew up overseas.
Mm-hmm.
We're used to it. We're used to being around people that aren't speaking English or maybe can't speak English. And,
Mm-hmm.
it was second nature to us. Like we showed up here and it didn't feel like we were in a different, on a different planet. It
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
very, very normal for us.
And do you learn the language at the moment or?
So before we moved here, so my wife had gotten the job before we moved here. I have a lifetime membership to Rosetta Stone, but
Oh, okay.
Romanian is not
It's not on there.
is not one of their languages.
Ah,
So
who knew?
we got on Duolingo, and I was not a big fan of how Duolingo was teaching me the language. It spent so much early focus on like writing, and I'm like, no, I don't need to learn how to write yet. I need to learn how to speak and understand. And I didn't like the order in which they were teaching words, so I stopped using Duolingo. And then all of her colleagues were like, everybody speaks English, so you don't even worry about it. One of them was like, I've been here for
Mhm.
5 years, I don't speak any Romanian. Well, we got here and nobody speaks English.
Oh, okay.
And maybe it's because we're a little outside the city.
Uh-huh, yeah.
But because my wife and I speak French, and I know a little bit of Spanish, I can sometimes read Romanian because Romanian is a Romance language.
Uh-huh.
So the
Oh,
root
yeah.
words in French and Romanian are the same
Mhm.
sometimes. So I can sometimes read Romanian or at least understand what it's saying. But the accent, it's like somebody speaking French with a Polish accent. Like
Right,
it's a very interesting sound to me. So
right.
communication can be difficult, but we have Google Translate now, which 20 years ago didn't exist. So I can just pull out my phone and type it in and show it to them, and
Okay, this
it
is
makes
how you
life
do it
easier.
now?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And, would there be a option of, taking classes?
There probably is. There's a podcast that I recently found that's how to, learning Romanian.
Uh-huh.
So I, at some point, will start that. Um,
Okay.
but yeah,
Yeah.
but luckily, my daughter, we have three kids. This is the one in the middle. She has become a sponge for
Yeah.
picking up Romanian words
Mhm.
with all the Romanian students at the school. So I'm just hoping that she will learn Romanian and then she can be the translator, sort of like my sister did for my parents in Poland. She went to a Polish school, she learned Polish, and then she was the translator.
Oh, yeah, yeah, got it. And so how old are your kids?
I have an 11, a 9, and a 4-year-old.
So what did they say when you told them, "Hey, what about we're moving abroad?"
Their reaction was pretty similar to how I feel my reaction was when I was a kid. It
Uh-huh.
was that's whatever, yeah, we're moving, but what about my friends, right? Like that was the only focus.
Mhm.
And luckily for them is, when I moved abroad in 91, there you know there was no Skype, there was no
Yeah,
FaceTime, the email
right.
was barely a thing. So they've maintained a lot of those
Okay.
friendships. It's just, logistically challenging because there's a 10-hour time difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they've adapted really well. Children just in general can adapt to anything really well. Me
Okay.
and my siblings did it, and yeah, but
And
they're excited to.
yeah, and can I ask you for the oldest one, like, how the language barrier is, like, how she is, like, adapting to the language?
Okay, so we've always kind of, well, haven't been super consistent, but we've tried to always have our kids be working towards a second language.
Uh-huh.
And just because of the way I grew up, I'm going to say things in French, Spanish, Polish, German. I'm just going to say, there's things that I only say in a certain language. And so they have gotten used to me talking to them in Polish, even though they don't understand what I'm saying half the time. So they're used to not understanding what people are saying. So it's not this like ghost white face, I don't know what's going on. It's like, oh, I don't know that language, right? It's a very like calm reaction.
Right. And that probably takes an 11-year-old probably a little bit longer than a 5-year-old.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And so I want to ask you also going back to when you were still in the US. So do you remember like the moment where you said like, hey, now let's really look into this, trying to go abroad?
Yeah. So my wife and I, we had tried several times. We had tried probably about 15 years ago. And then that was probably about every 5 years we had looked into it for international teaching jobs. And it never worked out. We probably didn't have enough dedication, and really, really trying to make it work. And we just kind of reached a point where it's like, our kids are getting to that age, all of we were living outside of Seattle. All of our friends had really left the area at that point. So it's like, we don't need to be here anymore. What's our next jump? And so we decided to make a really big push for an international.
Yes. But were you open to any place?
Pretty much. I have made my own spreadsheet. That is, it's the global peace ranking for countries, and then the women's safety and security ranking. And I kind of combined those scores and made up a spreadsheet. And so whenever we're looking at a job, should my wife apply to this? We go and look at where's the country land on there. But there's, I don't know, 180 countries on the list. I think we'd probably go to 100 of them.
Okay. Do you remember what was your the first or the top 10?
The top 10 has changed for some reason. I'm not 100% certain, but my top one is Vietnam right now.
Oh, okay. So I expected something else in Europe. Okay.
Yeah, Europe would be great, but it's like I've spent so much of my life in Europe. There's nothing, I don't know, new in Europe. There's something comforting about Europe. But my wife was interviewing for a job at a school in Vietnam, and I fell in love with these high-rise apartment buildings that have their gyms and restaurants and pools and everything right there. And I'm like, that's so convenient for me. I don't have to go anywhere.
Sounds like it.
And the number one item on my bucket list is to see Angkor Wat in Cambodia. So I was like, that's really close. And there's also a bunch in Southeast Asia that I still have yet to experience. And I have some old teachers of mine that teach in schools in Vietnam. It's like, well, 5 or 6 of my teachers have all ended up in Vietnam. It's got to be a really nice place to be. So for some reason, probably all those reasons, that's why it's near the top of my list. But I'd go back to Switzerland. I'd go back to Poland, China. It's on there. Yeah. Those are definitely, my top 5.
So after 4 months, what is that you really like?
I still almost every day am pleasantly shocked by for us coming from the Seattle area, how cheap everything is.
Okay.
This morning we left the gym, and there's a supermarket really close to our house, and we let the kids go in, and they all got donuts, and 4 donuts, and it was $1.80.
Okay, for 4 donuts.
Yeah, I was like, that's so. In Seattle, I think each donut is like $3.
Right. Okay. Like Seattle, yes. Okay. Like what? I mean, depends on what kind of donut.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Everything is cheap, but can you, for example, just make an example? How much is the gym membership in Romania versus Seattle?
The gym was not as cheap as I would have liked. But we did get our memberships. There was it was like 55% discount or something when we bought it, but it worked out for all of us. It was probably like $200 a month, but you had to prepay for the whole year.
That's Romania.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we prepaid for the whole year. It's, for all, I'm going to say 5 of us, but the youngest one doesn't need it. So for 4 of us is a little over $200 a month. But it also has a pool. So you can't compare it to like a Planet Fitness, which is $10 a month. But
is it like a YMCA?
Yeah, probably along those lines. Like it's got, an indoor pool, an outdoor pool. It's got a couple of aerobic rooms, and then it has a full weight room.
So what about if you go to a restaurant with the 5 of you? How much would you spend there?
We'd probably end up spending around 300 lei, which it's 4.5. I'm going to say 5 because it's 4.97 lei to a euro. So I do everything. So it's like, what is that? 60 euros.
Okay.
So it's pretty cheap. The one thing that is very interesting about restaurants here is if you buy a beer, it's very reasonably priced compared to what it would be like in a supermarket. And the same thing with like a spirit, right? What you see, it's very reasonably priced versus what's in the supermarket, but not wine. Wine is very expensive by the glass, but you can go buy a bottle for 2 euros. But if you want a glass, it's like 4 euros for a glass. The math doesn't add up to me. And I don't know, maybe Romania is not a wine drinking country and that's why, but I haven't figured it out and nobody's been able to give me an answer. So
I didn't think it would be not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Isn't there even like a wine region?
There is, and there's Romanian wines, and they're good wines. So yeah, it doesn't. I haven't figured it out yet. It's just one of those quirks.
Okay. What else is there that you really like?
This isn't exclusive to Romania, but I love getting to see, buildings that are 500 years old.
Right. I like that too.
I miss that so much. Yeah. I remember when we were living in a spot in the U.S., there was a building that was 100 years old, and they were voting on if they should classify it as a historical and preserve it. And it's made out of wood. And I'm like, well, you can't preserve wood. It's going to fall down eventually.
Yeah.
And I'm like, 100 years old isn't old either. Like, I'm used to like 800,000-year-old castles, right? Like that's what I grew up looking at. Yeah. Or Roman ruins, right? They're all over Europe.
Right. Yeah. No, I always appreciate that too. When we're going to Europe, I'm always like, oh yeah, this is how old is.
Yeah.
Like this is whatever considered here as old is new.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wanted to ask you, how is it then only having one car where you are?
It works for us. So the gym is 1.2 kilometers away. And I know that because I walk there and back every day. My wife's work is probably generally a 15-minute drive. So if I needed the car for whatever reason, I could go drop her off at work. And then do what I need to do.
Is there public transportation?
There is. It's not great out where we are. There is a bus that stops 600 meters from the house that will take me into Bucharest. So that's nice. But, I'd prefer a train because it's a lot faster, or, the metro or something. But so it exists. I could do it if I needed to, but
you haven't needed it yet.
Yeah, we haven't needed it. And like all the errands we usually reserve for the weekend anyways. So
right. And since you mentioned it so often now, did you convert to meters? I mean, like, did you have a problem with the metric system?
No, because I grew up with it, so I still hadn't 20 years in the U.S. after graduating high school. I still hadn't fully figured out the imperial system. I was still doing that. 5 went to dinner and ate nothing to see how many feet were in a mile. And the only thing that it was always difficult for me is Celsius. Again, I grew up with it, but I still have, I know that 40 is like over 100 degrees. So like
Yeah.
that's too hot. But if somebody, I'm getting better. So now I'm like, people are like, oh, it's 17 degrees outside. I'm like, oh, that's fine. Maybe it's just a light jacket, or, it's
Right.
25. Okay, I can wear shorts. But
See,
yeah.
I have it the opposite. Like I cannot get used to Fahrenheit. I mean, I guess I switch on my phone. I switch back and forth. I have Fahrenheit just for the conversation with with friends. But like for me, I need to have it in Celsius because I just cannot deal with it. I'm like, doesn't mean anything to me. I know like 90 is still very high. 80, but 80, I'm already like, what am I wearing?
Yeah.
80, I don't know. Then I need to look in Celsius. And also I don't know about like inches and all this. So now my daughter, she's in second grade and she's learning about like inches and centimeters. So I'm like, oh, I can look at this and maybe I learned finally now.
I even, it was almost once a week. Well, how many inches are in a foot, or how many ounces are in a gallon? It's illogical. It's, unlike the metric, which is a base 10 system, so it all makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah, there's this really funny sketch about it from SNL, where they're like all sitting around the fire, the first
Oh yeah.
settlers. Have you seen
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It's really funny.
Yeah, I
I
remember that.
don't. um, but is there something that you miss besides friends and family?
Sometimes I miss, like, there's like specific places that were, like important to me and my family, or like certain food items.
Mhm.
So there was a place that we used to go outside of Seattle. It was essentially like a European supermarket and bar. It was called Marina Mercantile, and it's just outside of Seattle. And we loved that place. And I still think about it. We follow them on Instagram, and every time they post, we get a little sad. But that was
Okay.
our last night in Seattle before we got on the plane over here. We went there.
Mhm.
Um, so we missed that place. There's a couple other places like that are,
Yeah.
important to us as a family. But right now, that's about all we miss. I'm sure
Okay.
more stuff will pop up as it
Yeah,
as
yeah,
time
but
goes
this
on.
sure. And is there something in Romania food wise that you really like?
So Romania really, really likes like Lebanese food, like shawarma.
Ah, okay.
And
I like
but
that too.
it's different, right? They've
Mhm.
definitely, like, it's kind of molded with some Romanian food, like some of the sausage, like you can tell the Eastern Mediterranean roots, but like with a
Uh-huh.
Romanian spin on it. So it's delicious. And I couldn't even tell you the name, but it's like the pork sausage that they sell in every supermarket. It's all the same sort of flavor profile. So that's really good. There's also an eggplant, I don't know, like dip that they make. Again, I don't know the name of anything. It's delicious. Um, yeah, so there's a couple of things that we've really. It's like, oh, when we leave, we're taking that with us.
Okay. All right. And do you know yet what the plan is? Like how long are you gonna stay there?
No, and so my wife and I, we've made lots of plans in our life, and nothing has ever, really
Uh-huh.
really gone according to plan. So we've stopped making plans. So it's
Right.
just like, just keep putting stuff out there. When contracts are starting to end, just put out applications, see what happens.
Right.
So I will almost certainly be here for a full year. So another
Okay.
7 months.
So this is like the work contract is for 1 year.
Yes,
Mhm.
which is, let's say, like most schools, it's like 2 to 3, but not every school's the same. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a
Sure.
1 year contract. So we'll see.
Mhm. And what about you? What do you do?
So I work for a tech company in the U.S. and, well, they're awesome because I can work from anywhere in the world.
Oh, nice.
So the only thing that's difficult is the time difference can be a little difficult. If I have
Mhm.
to have a meeting, sometimes it's like I had a meeting at 9 p.m. the other day.
Right.
It happens, but yeah, they're a great company. They're very supportive. They actually have a Romanian headquarters.
Uh-huh.
And it was just purely coincidental that we ended up in Romania. But it was nice because I got to meet all the people that I had been only meeting digitally
Right.
up until getting here. So
Okay. Can you go into the office there as well?
I can. It's the traffic.
Mm.
It would not be practical if we lived closer to the office. Absolutely, I'd go in there a lot. But if there's no traffic, it's a 25-30 minute drive. But with it'll take
Okay.
me an hour and a half to get there. It's just
Right.
too much commuting.
Right. But and what about your kids? Do they go to the same school where your wife is teaching?
Yes, yeah, all three of them go, and one of
Okay.
them is in my wife's class. So
Okay. So yeah, I was wondering like how is like Romanian schools?
yeah, so it's I'm gonna put it in quotes. It's an American school,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the students there are Romanian. You'd really have to ask my wife for that.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but before that, my wife homeschooled our kids for several years, so they're really excited. And part of the reason they were homeschooled was like COVID, and it was,
Right.
she'll take it from here. So they love going to a school that has after school activities and a lot of stuff that they really couldn't get. So
Yeah. How long did it take you to be comfortable?
here, like
Mhm.
5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes?
I could be
Okay.
comfortable anywhere. My dad, I didn't really realize it because I was essentially a kid, but I graduated high school. At that point, I had lived in 4 countries,
Uh-huh.
and then I moved to the middle of nowhere, Ohio, in farm country to go to college. And I didn't skip a beat. It wasn't weird. There was no adapt. Like I'm just this weird,
Okay.
chameleon. So
Alright, so you adapt really well.
yeah,
Well, that is nice. Good.
it is.
Uh, and does your family also still move, a lot? I mean, your parents? Or did you, when you were, like, an adult, decide, like, I mean, now I don't have to move with you guys anymore, but I was just wondering if your family still has that.
Yeah, so my parents aren't together anymore.
Uh-huh.
My dad has continued the international
Yeah.
lifestyle. He's currently in Dubai, and my mom, she's in the U.S., but she has moved around quite a bit. She was in Illinois and then Texas, and now she's in South Carolina. So
And what did they say when you were like, "Hey, we're going to Romania"?
my dad was very excited because we were going to be a lot closer, and we are a lot closer.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's
My mom
Dubai.
was not
Halfway.
happy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because you were not close anymore.
Yeah, and I have the only grandchildren right now, so
Well, it's a reason then to visit.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, so I already asked you what your plans are, but you don't wanna make plans.
Yeah, we'll just see what happens and go with the flow.
Yeah, but you would be open to staying or open to.
I would definitely be open to staying. I generally, because I've moved around every 3 to 5 years,
Mhm.
I start to get antsy after 3 to 5 years, so, like, absolutely, we could stay
Okay.
in Romania, but once we hit 3 or 4 or 5 years, I'm gonna wanna go.
Okay. Was it also in Seattle the same amount of
That
time?
No, that was the weird thing about Seattle, and maybe it's because, like, we lived in a city called Bellevue, which is
Mhm.
just across, and then we lived in Maple Valley, and then we lived in Renton, and then we lived in Des Moines. So we were kinda traveling around the
Okay.
area,
Yeah.
but we stayed there for almost 9 years, I think. So that was the
Okay.
longest I'd ever spent in one spot.
Okay.
Uh,
And, if you would move back to the US, would you move back to the Seattle area? Or would you then say, "Okay, I'm done with this. I gonna go East Coast," or.
I don't know where I would go. I'd have to think about that, but I wouldn't go to Seattle. Nothing against Seattle, but I want
Mhm.
something new
You want,
and exciting.
yeah, no, I get it, yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, Southern California, someplace a little warmer with a little less rain, but
Okay, got it. Do you have that now?
well, right now it's cold,
Well, okay, it's November, okay.
we had a very hot summer, so we got here at the end of June, and it was like 42 degrees
Is that
for
normal?
weeks. They say they usually get a heat wave in the summer, so
But
for a
not
couple
so
weeks.
long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it's been It's been cold in the mornings. I'll get up. Wife and the kids leave for school, and I'll go to the gym, and it'll be like -2, -3 out in the morning. But
And what about like the Romanian culture? So, I mean, since you're working from home, are you like dealing with a lot of locals, or like is like sometimes you have to, is there like a little bit of a clash or something?
I'm not. So I'm interacting with locals when I go out. The supermarket or
Mhm.
wherever we go. Obviously, I work with some of the Romanians, so I'm dealing with them a little bit. I wouldn't say there's not clashes. There are, obviously there's culture differences. I'd say like the only one that's like really annoying us
Uh-huh.
is, I think it's differences in like parenting, but we'll like our 4-year-old
Ah,
will be having a meltdown right in public sometimes because
right.
he didn't get whatever he wanted,
Yeah,
and we don't entertain that. We're like, we're gonna ignore you and you're gonna get over it. And he'll
right.
have people will come up and try to cheer him up, and it's like,
Oh.
no, you got to leave him alone.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
But
but that would be probably the normal thing to do there.
yeah, we have some friends that are from Brazil, and they complain about the same thing. They have a toddler as well, and they're like, we don't. It's they won't mind their own business, is what they've said.
Okay, alright.
But
Oh,
yeah, it's just,
interesting.
and I remember things like that in France a little bit, and in Poland. Like people would just come up and they'll just touch your kid, right? It's a culture
Right.
thing.
Uh-huh. I wonder, like, I mean, my kids have plenty of meltdowns in public.
Yeah,
Here, it's like, whatever, you get the looks, and I don't know. I remember, like, I had my daughter had a big meltdown on public transportation in Berlin once. Yeah, people make comments, but they're not like whatever touchy or anything.
I feel like in the US, when your toddler's having a meltdown, if somebody's looking at you like with a scowl, they don't have kids. But if
Probably.
somebody is looking at you and there's like this unspoken connection, they
Yeah.
totally have kids. They remember what the toddler phase was like, and there's
Yeah, that's
this
true.
bond.
That's true. They're like, "Oh, yeah, I know exactly what that is
Yeah,
right now." Fine. Is there something else that you don't get used to?
there's a couple things that I have that it doesn't make any sense to me. I have seen maybe 3 helmets for bicycles, those little scooters, and 2 of the helmets were hanging from the handlebars. So nobody wears a helmet.
Uh-huh.
So my joke is they're not scared of traumatic brain injuries,
Okay.
but they are apparently deathly afraid of any bump in the road. Like a tiny speed bump, a little dip, they will come to a complete stop, like a brand new SUV, and they will come to a complete stop to go over this bump. It's but they'll
Okay.
also, if you're doing, less than 130 kilometers an hour, they'll pass you off and cut you off, but then come to a complete stop to go over the
Okay.
speed bump. I don't get it. Sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's aggravating if I'm in a
But
hurry, but
so this is like in traffic, you mean?
yeah,
Okay.
it's
But the helmets is for scooters, or I mean for
oh,
like
any
motorcycles or
kids on a
bike?
bike. There's the little electric scooters, and then like the Razor scooter that like I grew up with. Um, yeah, the kids just don't. The kids and adults, they just don't
But
wear
that's the same
helmets.
here, honestly. Like, I mean, I always put helmets on my kids, but my neighbors, they don't care if their kids wear a helmet.
I
I don't
just
know.
maybe I was in a couple of like bike accidents when I was a teenager, and it's like, oh, I won't get on one without a
I
helmet.
mean, I'm also like, hey, no, you have to wear a helmet. Like, I'm not. You're not allowed to be on any.
Yeah,
I even put like a helmet on them when they're sitting in the bike trailer. You know, where it's
yeah.
usually like you cannot like fall to the side or something, but like still they have whatever. There's like cars around, and so is there anything though that's a challenge?
Right now, the biggest challenge is probably the language barrier.
Mm-hmm. Do you have to deal with a lot of bureaucracy?
We have a little bit just with getting our residency permits.
Uh-huh.
That has been it's frustrating because it's far away and the lines are crazy. Even if you have an appointment, like
Uh-huh.
the appointments don't seem to mean that much. And they issued my wife's, but she has to go pick it up. They won't mail it to us for
Okay.
whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so she got her residency permit issued like 2 days after me and the kids put in our applications. So we haven't picked
Okay.
hers up yet. So that we're just going to pick up everybody's at the same
Yeah, yeah.
time because the traffic is just, and the lines are just crazy. It's like, we're just going to do it once.
Okay, but you said like the traffic is so bad, but is it like I mean, I don't know how bad is it like if you compare it to Seattle?
It's so much worse than
Oh,
Seattle.
really? Because I
Yeah,
always thought like they have maybe like more options to skip the car.
no, I don't. I have just kind of chalked it up to like poor city planning, which
Ah, yeah,
I got it. The city's hundreds of years old, but
right.
there's new roads that connect to old roads, and where the roundabouts are in some places, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, heck, on the highway they have a crosswalk, so you'll be going 130 kilometers an hour, and then somebody's going across the street.
Is that kind of
So yeah, there's some things that
so
just don't
that's
make a
so
ton of
weird.
sense.
Yeah.
And we were, one of the parents that we're friends with from my wife's school, were telling me, "Oh man, we don't like to go into Bucharest." And he's like, "I haven't been into Bucharest in 10 years." He's like, "I hate going into Bucharest. The traffic is terrible."
Okay. Right.
But yeah, the buses are also full. So it's
Mhm.
probably the city's probably just over its capacity in terms of what it can
Mhm.
handle. But
Yeah, and for the residency card, so you guys have just American passports, or since you traveled so much when you were a child, do you have like another citizenship?
I do not. Right now, it's just U.S. passports. However, hopefully, I don't know, next year, maybe my wife will have her Italian passport,
Okay,
which
so
means the
she has
kids
like
will have their
Italian
Italian
roots.
passport. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and then I will have to learn Italian, and then I can get my Italian passport.
Okay. So is the visa thing, was it then you got it through her work?
Yeah, so she has a work visa, and then me and the kids are under a family reunification.
Right. Right. And that was not too complicated.
It was very complicated, not for me, but for my wife and her colleagues. It was very complicated.
Okay. Okay, that's good to
Yeah,
know.
and when we showed up to the appointment, my wife brought a folder, and it was just, I need this, I need this. Like she was ready to go. She had it all figured out by then. But
Mhm.
it was a lot of paperwork, and a lot of things had to be translated and notarized,
And was that
and
before you left the US?
a little bit of both. So we had to
Mhm.
get apostilled versions of our birth certificates and our marriage certificate, and then
Sure.
when we got here, all of that had to be translated and
Oh.
notarized.
Even if it's in English,
Yeah.
right?
So
Oh god, we had that too. Like I had to get so in Germany, the last name of the children, it has to be one, you know? So but when my daughter was born, we gave her our both last names
mhm.
because like I never changed to my husband's last name. So and then we wanted to get my daughter the German passport. We had to do a name change first. So we had to send also the birth certificate to Germany for that. And I don't know, Germany, I mean, I feel like it's a Western country, a Western European country. I expect that they speak English in
Yeah.
the offices. But I had to get it translated. I'm like, it took a year.
Jeez.
Anyway, yeah, so okay, you had to translate your paperwork.
Yep.
And do you remember like how long the process was like for to get everything?
The longest process was getting the appointment. So
Mm,
our appointment was, maybe it was a month ago. Like we had been here, we overstayed our 90 days, but because we already had the appointment, it's.
It was okay.
They give you a pass or whatever.
Right. All right. Okay, so you got there on the tourist visa, and then
because
process.
because we're U.S. citizens, we get 90 days for free. We don't need any paperwork or anything.
Right.
And then it was, when we got shortly after we got here, my wife started the process of getting her residency permit, getting ours. So.
Okay, but were you ever like kind of afraid of the process for the papers?
I wasn't afraid of the process. I was afraid that if I had to leave for a work trip or any sort of trip, I wasn't going to be let back in. Luckily, I didn't have to leave.
Yeah.
But I was nervous. I was like, if we overstay our visa, we could be blacklisted from the whole EU. Like I'm not.
Okay.
I don't want to risk that.
Right.
And you get a stamp in your passport that says you overstayed your visa, and I'm like, I don't want that.
Right. And but that was only a worry that was work related.
I mean, it was, could we go visit my dad? Right? Could we leave the country under any circumstances and get back in, or is there immigration services going to show up at our front door and say you've been here too long?
Did you know like the period of time that it would take? Do you know that period? I mean, where you were not allowed to travel?
We didn't. So when we got here, we found out shortly after we got here that, and this is my wife's colleague said this, that like the whole visa department shuts down for like a month. So that put a huge delay on, things. There was a lot of misunderstandings in the process, and it's one of those things we probably should have just gotten an immigration lawyer to do it all for us. So lesson learned, but
that would have been easier. Okay.
Yeah, it's all worked out. We'll probably be able to pick up our permits in person, in the next couple of weeks, and then we're done.
Oh, okay.
And then we're legal.
Okay, so it is like a journey to get there, but it is manageable.
Yes, and that's also why I have like Italian passport, because with an EU passport, staying in another EU country is so much easier.
Right. Okay, but that probably also takes a little bit of time, right?
I don't know the process, but I do know. So a lot of international schools in the EU, they want you to have an EU passport because then they don't have to pay as much to get you a visa. So I assume it's a much easier, much easier process.
All right. I think I got all my questions.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay. Yeah, and that was it from this week. That was my guest, Michael, from Romania, or in Romania. If you are interested in being a guest on my podcast, then please reach out to me at worldscollide123pod@gmail.com, or you can also just make any other comment if you like about the podcast and we have like a conversation about it. I always appreciate if people are reaching out to me. You can also reach out to me on Instagram or Threads or on TikTok. It's Worlds Collide Pod, just one word. All right, and then that was it from this week. Until next week. Next Thursday is the next episode. Okay, that was it. Bye.